Greetings, Guardians, my name is Bife here. So, I didn't quite think we'd be talking about this so soon, but here we are. As it turns out, there are some new details on the new dungeon that have been revealed, and it's gotten me looking with a fair bit more anticipation than I had at Heresy. Bleak as the times may be for Destiny right now, it's cool to see that there are still bangers releasing here and there. And, well, maybe this follows in the vague footsteps of Vesper's host. Maybe this is actually going to be a really cool dungeon. So, let's go ahead and break down everything that Bungie revealed recently about this new dungeon called Sundered Doctrine. Spoilers, of course, if you hadn't already guessed. Starting off, we need to head to the TWID. It's here that we get the following details revealed about the new dungeon. Quote, Heresy is right around the corner, and with it comes the launch of a new dungeon. On Friday, February 7th, travel to Savathun's throne world and infiltrate Rhulk's pyramid ship in the new dungeon, Sundered Doctrine. To celebrate the launch, we're issuing a challenge to the top fire teams in the world with the Sundered Doctrine Dungeon Race. That's nothing new. Dungeon races have been happening now, well, since Vesper's host, so it's not surprising that they'd continue it after the success of the last one. However, then there's the following. All fireteam members must acquire the Drowning Labyrinth quest to enter the dungeon. So we have a few things to go off there, and they are already kind of interesting. First of all, heading back to Savathun's throne world is always bound to land us in some kind of horrifying hive or darkness-based shenanigans, but with this explicitly heading back to Rhulk's pyramid, yeah, this is going to get spicier than usual. First of all, the name of both the dungeon and the quest offer us some insight at what might be happening here. So, I guess it's worth first asking, whose doctrine is being sundered? And is there any relevance for the description of this dungeon as being a part of the Drowning Labyrinth quest? From what we know about Heresy, the entire point of the episode is to tip the whole of the Hive pantheon on its head. The very name implies that we'll be countermanding the sword logic, doing something unthinkable. For the mainstream Zivor Wrath-aligned Hive, who haven't strayed from their old ways, Heresy is many things, from showing pity for an opponent to negotiating what might be considered a reasonable peace treaty with them. But the greatest heresy one can commit as a Hive is, of course, necromancy. It's a sin so grievous that when the Taken King Oryx discovered his own son Nokris had been learning it, he banished him forever from the Hive realms and removed every single record of him from the Hive's histories entirely. There was no mention of him in the world's grave. The only reason Oryx wasn't completely successful in this endeavor was because of a single statue in his own throne world at the Dreadnought, which he couldn't destroy. This was, for the longest time, our only hint to Nokris's existence. So why am I bringing this up? Well, I think I'm bringing it up because of the fact that for someone to commit heresy, it's kind of similar or comparable to sundering one's doctrine, in this case a religious or spiritual doctrine. The Hive of Zivor Wrath's brood still holds this truth. There is another oft-forgotten group that also holds on to these truths, and that's the Worm Gods. Their belief in such things, in fact, predates the Hive's belief. The belief in such things, as you might remember, is called the sword logic. So, if Sundered Doctrine is another example of what would be considered heresy to the Hive and the Worm Gods, then perhaps someone or something is being resurrected within the pyramid ship. What exactly, or who exactly? Well, my best guess isn't who you might initially think. It isn't Rhulk. It's his prime captive that my mind wanders to, the progenitor of the many worms that he experimented on, the so-called Worm Mother, Sita. No, not Chaita, as I previously pronounced it all the way back in the times of, like, Witch Queen. As it turns out, when you hear something the first time in-game, that's kind of got to be the default pronunciation. Say hi to all the Atheon fans for me. And besides, this way, it's less likely for me to get demonetized, as whenever I say Chaita, it's, well, you can probably make that one out for yourselves. For those of you who don't know, Zeta is the mother of all worm gods, She was one of the last survivors of the war on Fundament that cast her and her children into the deepest reaches of its oceans. She was what was used to fuel Rulk's superweapon, the Upended. And as we defeated the subjugator above this weapon, Zeta was left to die. This is my best guess as to what we'll be facing within the Sundered Doctrine, a worm god reborn and reawakened by some harebrained scheme from somebody, somewhere. Is that the only possibility? Well, no, far from it. The quest, the Drowning Labyrinth, raises an interesting connotation about who we might face. The use of the word drowning is one associated with both Rulk and the worm gods. "You shall drift, you shall drown in the deep" is a classic line of Zol, one of the worm gods. Meanwhile, Rulk also has lines involving drowning. In particular, his first challenge to us when we approach his pyramid ship in Vow of the Disciple. You know that line? Rise from the deep, or drown in it. So it is possible that Rulk is being resurrected here. But how likely is that? Well, I think it's substantially less likely, but it's not impossible. I'm making this based on an assumption that his remains were kind of removed from the pyramid and potentially have been nuked. This is a big assumption, and we really don't know what the state of the pyramid is after the missions where we went to re-enter it at the end of Witch Queen's kind of content cycle. You know, those points at which you just go in and you hear all the different dialogue pieces. You've got like 10 minutes in that area to explore them all and listen to Rulk. Yeah, that mission shows us nothing about Rulk's body, but the lore around Vow of the Disciple tells us a lot. In particular, there are materials from the pyramid ship that got transported out. This included canisters filled with something rather nondescript, save for its appearance as a black fluid substance. The Guardian carrying these vials crashed on Mars, and the materials leaked out, attaching to his body and creeping up his wounded extremities, strangely enough, seeming to heal them as they went. However, this wasn't a benevolent thing. There was a malicious voice attached to it, a voice that I think we can assume was Rulk, but is not actually guaranteed to be so. It spoke in his similar parlance, at very least. It's impossible to know because it was never truly confirmed, but what we do know is that the Guardian in question wasn't going to find out. They blew up their Sparrow's power supply and set off a small nuclear explosion in proximity to themselves, wiping out not only their own body, but also whatever remained of this black fluid substance. So was that what remained of Rulk? Well, maybe. I think he might not be coming back if that is the case. But also, it doesn't really confirm anything, because as best we know, his body might still be calcified at the very top of that platform above Zeta and the Upended. It leaves that big open question about whether the pyramid is in fact the correct location to find Rulk's body. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but no matter what happens, I'd say that whatever the black goop was, if that was Rulk, would point to the idea that he is significantly more dead than he was before, especially now that he seems to be a lot more crispy and ionized than he was before we even beat the snot out of him. So this could be about Rulk, it could be about Zeta, but it could be about neither of them, because this is Rulk's pyramid. It's worth exploring for a lot of other things than the dead bodies that you find within it. Rulk's pyramid is a cornucopia of strange artifacts with potentially dangerous stuff to explore, so let's just go ahead and talk about some of these things. First of all, there is the possibility that the ship itself is actually still alive. What do I mean when I say that? Well, as we learned in the final shape, the pyramid vessels aren't just ships. They have some kind of yearning and consciousness. They reach out, they react to other presences. They are, in a strange way, kind of sentient. We learned this in the final shape's ghost missions, that without the witness guiding them, they are left without someone to control them and direct them. There is a yearning for a mind to do so. In particular, this is in the Final Days quests, where you get the Visitation mission. It's the one where you revisit the Lunar Pyramid from the end of Shadowkeep. If this is true of Nezarek's pyramid on the moon, then it might be true of Rulk's pyramid in Savathun's throne world as well. Even Rolk's cursed and damaged vessel is something to seriously consider. After all, a single pyramid vessel, even if it's been grounded, has more advanced technology than anything we've ever seen. If each one is sentient and is looking for a new master, we should anticipate that the pyramid itself is the prize in all these schemes. After all, it's part of the reason why we denied it to the Scorn for so long. And as a result, there could be a bunch of different parties looking to invade it and possibly take it over. That includes the Scorn, but it could also include the Dread, the Shadow Legion, or Xivu Arath's Hive forces. And should one of them be able to raise this mighty ship and somehow drag it from the throne world, I mean, we're in a lot of trouble. As a quick reminder of the scale of power of some of these vessels, you have certain points at which their defenses were tested. In particular, Asher Mir on Io fired a whole bunch of different weapons at them, and it turns out they don't have some kind of sophisticated shielding system. They have more like what I'd call a teleportation barrier. Essentially, when a round is about to hit the pyramid, it's teleported out before it can do so and is sent to a harmless plane. Imagine the same thing happens, except with all sorts of weapons. You could literally launch a nuke at the pyramid ships, and the nuke wouldn't go off, because it would just be snapped into existence in another dimension, and would be rendered mostly harmless. So, yeah, there's your big problem with enemies having a pyramid ship. That's just one example of the defenses that they have, and that's to say nothing of the weapons that they hold. Mighty gravity generators that were capable of literally tearing planets in half. And if we're to believe that the power of the darkness extends into these vessels, it's possible that they could, in some long-winded harebrained scheme, be used to power something greater. We'll get onto that when we talk about the Upended. Beyond just the pyramid itself, Rolk's pyramid is filled with valuable relics, and I'm not just talking about those stolen from the Vault of Glass or distilled from pure Taken energy, but then there is the most obvious and powerful relic, a relic for which he has received one of his many titles, the relic above which we finally destroyed him. That big old floating cube, the Upended. We still don't know precisely how this broken superweapon operates, or what it does, but we know that whatever it is, it was capable of sealing Savathun's throne world from the light, and that gives me an idea of what it might do. I think this is a superweapon that's using the power of the darkness and the witness, and the power of taking in particular. If the Upended transports things, as the action of taking does, to a place sealed from the light, then perhaps it seals them in a pocket dimension of pure darkness energy, where they can be corrupted and destroyed. We've been to pockets of dark space like this, most notably on the Presage mission. It's worth remembering as well that one of the first lines Savathun said as Osiris when we explored that vessel was simply, "There is no light here." So what if that's what the Upended does? It quite literally turns worlds upside down, Stranger Things style, transporting whole planets into dimensional pockets like the one we found in Presage. And let's be honest, that would not be unheard of in terms of the power of the Witness and the Black Fleet either. I mean, take a look at what happened to Mars, Titan, Mercury, and Io. The Witness literally abducted them. Who's to say the Upended isn't the means by which that was done? Maybe every pyramid vessel has a relic like this within it. Maybe Rolk particularly likes them. Maybe it's a distillation of some of the power that the Witness was able to wield into an ability that would allow Rolk to do the same. Who knows? If we're going to consider the dangers someone might seek out within the pyramid, superweapons like the Upended rank pretty high on that list. And then, finally, I think we need to look at the strange curiosities that are still within Rolk's domain. For much as we were exploring his pyramid ship in great detail when it came to the raid, we never got to look into the stranger curiosities found deeper within the temple complexes. We never got to see what lies below in the deepest reaches of that place. Our journey through the pyramid, when we went to face Rolk, was like ascending the steps of a temple to meet a high priest. Perhaps this time, we'll be descending into the catacombs. to find what monsters roam in the darkness. Should we return here, we will also probably be greeted once more by the stranger things inside the pyramid, the many encased experiments where Scorn were ritually fed the children of Zeta and then held in stasis as a strange mockery of what happened to the Hive, the bone of the long-dead Leviathan, a testament to the might of the Subjugator, and of course, the Prophecy Wall, which seems to have mostly come true, but for its final verse, which remains incomplete as best we know. The exciting thing is that we don't know what'll be inside there, but I for one am looking forward to finding out. Vow of the Disciple is some of my favorite Destiny content across the whole franchise. In my mind, it is a top 3, if not the best raid experience in Destiny, with one of the most iconic villains that was tragically underexplored. And yet, he still has some of the biggest impact on the game. He is so massive and looms so large in my mind that I cannot wait to jump back into his pyramid. Rhulk is going to be something we look into more, and I imagine that's based purely on the dungeon alone. So we may get to lift the veil a little more and discover some more about Rhulk's past. If that somehow connects to the Vanguard probe that was dispatched in the direction of what remains of Lubrae, well, this may lead to more interesting places in the future of Destiny. More interesting places than I might have anticipated from Heresy. Anyway, that's all from me for now. Thank you so much. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and leave a like. And of course, if you want more videos and more content regarding universes near and far, go ahead and hit subscribe and the bell next to subscribe to turn on those email notifications. But as per usual, know that your viewership as always is quite enough for me. And that in the meantime, my name is Byf. Per audacia ad astra. I'll see you, Starside.